Thank you for clicking on this video, where I'm going to be looking into Grand Theft Auto, the Trilogy, the Definitive Edition, and telling you whether it has been fixed, and ultimately, if it's worth your money in 2024. If you do enjoy, please consider leaving a like and subscribing, as I make videos daily. Alright, let's get into it, but first, we need a bit of a history lesson. I think it's needed for us to understand how we got to where we are now. The original games were extremely influential and need no real introduction, I'm sure. GTA 1 and 2 were both decent games, but failed to impress critics because of their top-down view that caused restrictions in gameplay. Despite the general opinion being that these games were fun, they weren't spectacles of the genre by any means. However, this would change with the release of one of the most influential games ever dropped, Grand Theft Auto 3. Arguably the most important game of the GTA series, GTA 3 was a massive step forward for the series and the open world genre as a whole. The world was no longer top-down, giving players a full 3D world to explore and create chaos in. How many open world games have you played? A few, right? Well, this wasn't the case for people in 2001. This was a first for everyone who picked up the game. It offered something that no other game did at the time. Sure, there were crime games and driving games, but there weren't really any games that perfectly combined these two into a massive open world. By today's standards, the map is tiny, but in 2001, this would have been more than enough. The world felt lived in, dirty, and riddled with crime. Its film inspirations can be felt quite heavily throughout the game due to its atmosphere. This could be a huge reason as to why the game performed how it did, selling 6 million copies in its first year alone. It's crazy to think how this game was almost never created and never saw the light of day as a whole due to a very unfortunate event that occurred only a month before the game was supposed to release. I am of course talking about the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Sam and Denton Houser, two of Rockstar's creators, debated whether or not to release the game due to the shocking event that took place. Due to the fear-filling New York at the time, the massive level of uncertainty, they thought a game where crimes are committed in New York may be a bad idea to release. Ultimately though, they concluded that this game was too special not to release, so changes would be made to the game like removing missions and changing details that resembled real-life New York, like the police vehicles. The game would release on the 22nd of October 2001. This one, like the others, instantly caused controversy, but critics were more convinced by this installment, and Rockstar's fanbase grew instantly. A sequel was sure to follow, but players had no idea just how soon a sequel would be coming. Vice City would release just over a year later on the 29th of October 2002. It would sell 17.5 million copies, becoming the best-selling game of 2002. What was initially an expansion pack for GTA 3 turned to be a fully fledged experience on its own, as Rockstar had far too many ideas for it to be just a simple add-on to GTA 3. This game added on to GTA 3's formula, with a large open world, more activities and missions, and a talking protagonist this time. Although they would stop doing this later on, the game included huge names to voice act the characters. This game improved on GTA 3's foundation, but due to its short production time, some things were left unchanged, like the ability to swim was still unavailable, but this would likely change in the next and final installment of the trilogy. San Andreas would release on the 26th of October 2004, 2 years after Vice City. Seen as the best game of the trilogy by many and the whole series, San Andreas furthered the GTA experience and to this day is the best-selling PS2 game of all time, selling over 27.5 million copies. This game introduced a much lengthier story, twice the number of activities as its predecessors, and a huge open world. In fact, the first island that we have access to in San Andreas is bigger than all of GTA 3's and Vice City's entire maps combined. As you can see, these games were a pretty huge deal, and as we were heading into the 2020s, word got out that the remaster of these games may be coming out to celebrate GTA 3's 20th birthday, and sure enough, on the 22nd of October 2021, a trailer would be released, showing off the classic games in their new remastered forms. Noticeably, very little gameplay was shown, but the general consensus was that these games looked good and improved from the originals. It was as we got closer to the release for these games that issues began to become more apparent. Rockstar would remove the original versions of these three games from all digital storefronts, meaning if you wanted to play these games, you had to buy the new versions. As previously mentioned, no gameplay had been shown to players before release. People began to think there was a reason as to why no gameplay had been shown to us, and unfortunately we would be proven right when the games were released on the 11th of November 2021. Issues were easy to come by, not amusing ones either. game-breaking issues that stop players from being able to play the games. They would be taken down from the Rockstar launcher, leaving the games completely unplayable for PC players who had purchased the games. But the issues wouldn't stop there, as Rockstar would further announce that they had to remove certain files from the game. It would be found that these files were related to the Hot Coffee minigame from San Andreas, which I won't get into what that entails, but I'm sure if you're a fan of GTA you are aware of what that is. When the game was fully available to players, issues were everywhere. Even though changes were made, not nearly enough had been done and the games were still unplayable for many. And how could Rockstar do this? They had an amazing track record when it came to the quality of their games. Well, these games weren't actually made by Rockstar. They were made by a small company around 25 people known as Grove Street Games, beforehand known as War Drum Studios. Now you may be wondering why they were chosen to work on this project, and while I have a similar question, I think I know the answer. If you look at their catalogue, most of their games are remasters of these three games. So fair enough, there could be a decent studio to remaster these games, right? Well, as we know, this would ultimately not be the case. A small company had this monumental task to complete over 2 years. That sounds like ages, I know, but keep in mind this is 25 people remastering 3 huge games. This was an extremely unfair task to dump on the employees at Grove Street. While they made these games, I would argue it's largely Rockstar's fault for publishing this product, despite its glaring issues. How did these games end up like this? Well, I cannot say for sure because I had nothing to do with these games' creation. Some things have been confirmed that we can discuss that ultimately led to these games ending up the way that they did. AI played a large role in the creation of the Remastered Trilogy. Grove Street and Rockstar knew that recreating everything from scratch for these 3 games would take way too long, especially doing it by hand. And especially with the limited amount of employees that they had. So, when some old files went missing, some things needed to be remade entirely, which ultimately led to them thinking that AI would be a cool idea to implement and make the process a little bit easier. This had a massive effect on signs, especially around the world, which had plenty of misspellings at release or ruined jokes that meant a lot to players. The Unreal Engine 4 was used for this as well, which was a pretty controversial part of this game's creation, and is ultimately why the game looks how it does. Instead of using Rockstar's own engine, Rage, they opted to use a more cartoony looking engine to make the games feel similar to the original counterparts. This is one of the more 50-50 parts of the Definitive Edition. Some like the look, and some ultimately hate it. Updates would continue to come out to fix issues in these games through 2021 and 2022, but since then, the games have received about 1 update a year as far as I'm aware, with patch notes stating that they fixed small bugs and gameplay issues. It's fairly safe to say they've abandoned the trilogy, despite the fact that it still has so many immersion-breaking issues. Now, looking at it in 2024, is the GTA Remastered Trilogy worth it? Well, obviously it is up to every individual person. If you love the originals, then I would say yes, it is worth it, but make sure you buy them when they're on sale. As of now, where I live, they cost $100 for the whole 3, so definitely wait till they go a bit cheaper, I would say. If you played the originals, as I said, yes, but maybe wait a little bit longer till they're more affordable. But if you love the originals, these games might be a little infuriating to you because they definitely don't do the originals justice. If the originals were still available, I would actually tell you to buy those. If they ever do go back on digital storefronts, absolutely. If you're new to the series, buy those because that's a more immersive experience and I think you'll enjoy it more, despite the graphics of course not being as good, but the gameplay should be what matters I think to most people. Despite no official confirmation, the trilogy has sold at least 20 million as of early 2023, but for the final verdict, is the trilogy actually worth it? I would say no. It isn't. The only reason to buy it is, as I said, if it's on sale or because you can't access the originals and just love those games. And unfortunately, it seems like we may never see another update for these games, or at least they'll continue that cycle of maybe 1 a year, leaving these games basically unfinished and leaving players disappointed. Thanks for watching the video, everyone. I really do appreciate it. If you did enjoy, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. It really helps me out. And this video took a while to make, so any support's really appreciated. In saying that, if you haven't, please consider joining my Discord. I'm trying to get more people in there, so I'd really appreciate that as well. And if you have TikTok, follow me on there. A link to that is on my YouTube homepage. Again, I post there quite a bit, so I'd really appreciate that. In saying this, everyone, thank you. I really appreciate you being here, especially if you watch all the way to the end. I hope you have a great day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks, everyone.